Sup nerds, and welcome back to the HWN Nerds YouTube channel. So, can you believe it's been 20 years since Corpse Bride came out? I used to watch this as a child. It came out when I was 6 years old. It's something that I used to watch with my sister. You might recognize her from the podcast, Top Nerd Ashley. She's a massive Tim Burton fan. So this is something that we used to watch around Halloween together growing up. To me, it's one of those spooky yet sentimental, heartbreakingly sweet movies that pulls at your heartstrings while giving you that gothic vibe. I want to know, after 20 years, does it still have the same emotional weight on me as it did when I was 6? So let's get into it. Let's see if Victoria and Victor's story can still hold up today in 2025. Oh wow, I forgot how beautiful this movie actually is. Like, the fact that it's so gloomy and gothically pleasing right off the bat, and we just open on a shot of Victor drawing a butterfly, and the detail that they go into showing the lines of him drawing this butterfly. It's so aesthetically pleasing that it draws you in straight away and brings you to Victor's character as this artsy soul, almost instantly. Also gives you an instance of his caring nature where he draws the butterfly but then instantaneously lets it go, moving straight into the opening scene where it shows the difference between his and Victoria's family's ideologies. So how his parents just want to socially climb because they are, to put it how Victoria's family did, nouveau riche, so new money, and they want to ingratiate themselves with old money and get in there with the royalty and the upper crust of society. Whereas Victoria's family, as we find out throughout this opening musical number, which I forgot this was a musical, we find out are destitute and poor. They've squandered their wealth and they need this new money to help them out of their situation and help them immediately in the now. And so they're not actually overly keen or fond of Victor or his family at all. They're just using them.
Fish merchant.
It's not just that Victoria's parents look down on Victor's parents for being fishmongers, though. They themselves avidly try to hide where their wealth comes from during the beginning of the film. You see them pull the posters up of their business around their carriage as they're heading to their future in-laws' house, which is only across the street from what it looks like when we see Victoria's father spying on them through the binoculars. It seems like he's only looking across the road, but they're still taking a carriage there to seem more prim and proper, as to elevate their standing. It's a bold choice as to show off their character trait throughout this entire film. They are trying to elevate their social standing, while Victoria's family are just money grabbing because they have squandered their wealth. We don't know what they squandered it on, if they had a bad investment, which is probably the case. But the fact that this is a part of everything that's going on throughout this opening scene sets the stage for why their families are needing each other, despite Victoria's family avidly despising Victor's family, and Victor's family clearly just using Victoria and her family as pawns to elevate themselves.
I always knew I deserved better than a fish merchant's life.
Then we get to the actual moment where him and Victoria meet, which that is a really gorgeous moment. Like, seeing Victor in his element, being his artsy self, which we've already seen as the audience. We've seen him draw the butterfly, but he's just left alone with the piano. And the piano motif throughout this entire film is absolutely gorgeous, and I love the way that the piano is used throughout Corpse Bride. Like, it's used to show us him ingratiating himself to Victoria. It's used to build the relationship between Emily and Victor later on in the film. So we can all agree that this soundtrack is a bop and a banger, and I'd be remiss not to call out Danny Elfman for this fantastic soundtrack. So shout out to you, Danny. Thank you for the absolute amazing, somber but romantically sweet soundtrack that you gave us for this harrowing, spooky, peaceful film. I appreciate it. I love what you've done, especially with the piano motif and the bop that is the song about the Corpse Bride. I love when exposition is told to us through song, and that song is such a bop. It's stuck in my head from listening to this film, so that I could give you guys this video. I haven't been able to stop singing it, so thank you for that, Danny. Absolutely love this musical. Absolutely love every single song in it. I'm not going to harp on, because I could be here all day, but like, there are so many great songs in this.
Let's try it again.
Yes, yes, sir. With this candle. This candle.
Seeing Victor be a nervous king, trying to recite his vows, when he doesn't really know Victoria. Like, this is a thing for this time period. Like, we're not given an exact time period, but it's very clear from the clothing and, like, the way that the architecture is that we're in some sort of, like, Gothic Victorian England style here. And Victor being, like, so nervous because he's got this arranged marriage. He's just met Victoria. Yeah, they've had that moment with the piano, and they've, like, connected over music, but that's it. And then her mum immediately yelled at them for being on their own, which, again, is a thing. Victor even called it out himself when he said, "Where's your chaperone?" And Victoria didn't even answer him. Like, she blew it off. So there is a thing there. Like, Victor is being super, super nervous in this situation, because we later find out from his mum, when they find out that he's ran off with Emily, that he doesn't even know girls. So, from Victor's point of view, this is the first girl he's interacted with, canonically, from what we've been told by his mother, and he's got to recite his wedding vows to her. So that is going to be nerve-wracking. Then you've got the crusty old priest at the front yelling at him and, like, whacking him with his crook every 5 minutes, while Victoria's parents, like, tap their watches and tut at him. We do get, like, a 3 hours later, so we know he's been doing this for a long time. Only for Lord Barkers to show up and be like, "Oh, I'm a day early." And you have the two rich people be like, "Is he from your side of the family?"
This ring. I ask you to be mine.
So yeah, after the disaster that is the rehearsal dinner, rehearsal wedding, Victor runs off to the woods and recites his vows over and over again, getting them wrong, progressively worse every single time, until he finally gets up the courage and gets them right, being a little bit cocky. He finally gets them spot on and places the ring on what he thinks is a tree, and turns out to be our corpse bride, Emily. Which, to be fair to Victor, she's just baiting him at this point, baiting whoever, and waiting around for someone to slip a ring on her finger. It's not really fair to whoever puts the ring on her finger, because he didn't propose to her. There's no body on show. He didn't know there was a woman there. He thought it was a tree. It looks like a tree. And the minute he places it on, she pounces. So, Emily, you're not really being fair here. But Victor, I'm so sorry, my guy. You're about to get, like, the biggest jump scare of your life. Because now, as far as Emily is concerned, you are married to her. I just want to take a moment here, though, to be like, call myself out a little bit. And I'm going to sound a little bit weird here. They didn't have to go so hard on the character design for Emily in this film, because despite the fact that she's supposed to be dead, they designed, arguably, next to Victoria, the most attractive person in this film as Emily, and she's the corpse bride. Like, she's supposed to be a dead girl, and yet she is so beautiful compared to every other character we meet despite Victoria. I get that that's the whole point. Like, the only two real beautiful characters we meet in this film are the two people that are married or going to marry Victor. But, like, it's so weird that one of the attractive characters is a corpse.
Oh man, looks like we got ourselves a breather.
It's the way that the colours, the vibrancy of the colours bring life to this dull world. It's so jarring to see that the dead world, especially when we get to the underworld later on, like after Emily basically kidnaps Victor, that the underworld is more vibrant and more alive than the living world, which is just dull and grey and very bland. Whereas you've got this vibrant, almost mosaic style of colour in the underworld, and it's so pretty that, like, that touch of colour added to the grey that you've been subjected to adds to Emily's, like, undead beauty, I suppose.
But, Victor...
Victoria and Victor's love and relationship, it goes from them not knowing each other to them wondering if they could love each other to them being undoubtedly in love with each other in the span of, like, 30 minutes runtime of the film. And I'm a Disney kid. I grew up on Disney. I know love at first sight. But we didn't get that in this. That's not the story they were telling. It's Victor shows up. Victoria's not that certain about this marriage. It's then Victor fucks up the rehearsal dinner, for lack of a better term, and then he runs off with another woman as far as she's concerned, only for him to show back up, talk to her, tell her he's married, only for the other woman to show up and be a corpse, for her to be like, I have to save Victor, and be totally smitten with Victor. Like, she's totally smitten after he fucks up the rehearsal dinner. Now, I'm all for, like, quick romances, But that was quicker than a modern Disney movie. Like, we go from 0 to 100 like that. And, okay, it's an early 2000s movie. We move romances very, very quickly in movies. I understand that, but there's not much time for build-up, especially since though it's not a very long film. It does make sense that this would happen, but like at the same time, it's so unrealistic that they meet in one day, fall in love in one day, he gets dragged off to the underworld by Emily in the same day, and all is well. But like, they didn't really have much time to fall in love. They met for an hour. Again, I understand it's like the Disney trope. They meet, they fall in love, that's it. So I'll go with it because it's very Disney, but like it does jar me a little bit that we go from I don't know if I could love him to I'm in love with him and he's the one that I want to marry. I want to marry for love and I want to marry Victor. That is how quick we jump.
Make haste, my dear. Our relatives will arrive at any moment. We must have you looking presentable for Lord Barkis.
Victoria's parents absolutely suck. They are a nightmare. And I get that it's the time period they are in, but like, they move on from Victor so quick when Lord Barkis is like, yeah, I'm also rich, and I'll marry her. They don't do any research into this guy whatsoever. They don't even know whose side of the family he's supposed to be from. They don't check with any relatives if anyone knows who this guy is. He just showed up at their house, claimed to be a lord, claimed to have money, and they were like, we'll marry our only daughter to this guy. They suck so bad. Like, I get that she was used as a pawn on purpose, and I get that all of it, but they absolutely suck. They did not check with anyone. They did not do any research. They were just immediately like, well, he's out, so yeah, we're gonna move on to this.
I thought this was all going so well.
So while all this is going on with Victoria, we obviously have the storyline in the underworld with Victor and Emily, where we start to see a different side to Emily, which is a less possessive version of her, as we've only really seen her be very lovey-dovey and possessive with Victor so far. But we get to see more of her vulnerability and her loneliness here. And it's where things start to pull at your heartstrings and you really start to see her character come alive, I think. While we've got everything with what I just said about Victoria's parents being assholes, you really start to see how much Victor tricking her so that he could go back and spend time with Victoria makes him an asshole, because Emily just needs companionship. That's all she longs for. We get told in her backstory in the song, which, again, shout out to Danny Elfman, that song was phenomenal. But like, that she was tricked by a guy she was in love with and he murdered her in cold blood. And that is how she ended up as the corpse bride. And for Victor to use those emotions so that in Emily's eyes he could go be with another woman. I know from our perspective and Victor's, Emily is the other woman, but she doesn't see it that way. She sees it as though Victor promised himself to her in that woods, and he's going back on this promise, just like the man that murdered her. And you start to see this happy-go-lucky facade break down, and we start to see like the truth of how lonely Emily truly is come to the forefront. Even when her friends are trying to tell her that she's great and she's amazing, through the spider and the maggot, we get Emily being like, but I'm not alive. I'm dead. I can't feel pain. When I touch a burning candle, nothing happens. When I stab myself with a knife, nothing happens. Victoria gets everything I didn't. And you start to see those insecurities come through. This scene is so beautiful and so great because it parodies what we're seeing with Victoria as well when we pan back up to Victoria. It's why I wanted to show what was going off with Victoria before I went down to what was happening with Emily. So you can see that both girls are kind of trapped in an unhappy situation, and how Victor is really just the vehicle. That's all he really is. He's not the main character. You think he is, but he's not. When you first watch the beginning of the film, the main character of this film is Emily, with Victoria as like a secondary character, and Victor being the vehicle for both of these girls to get out of these oppressive, unhappy situations. That's the way that I'm reading into it as an adult, as opposed to how I would have read into it as a kid. It's just the avenue that it takes for Emily to finally get out of this loneliness and let go of everything that happened to her in life and finally be able to move on, which we'll get to when we get to the end of the film. And Victoria to get out of this evil, selfish role that her parents are forcing on her, such as when they choose that she's going to marry Lord Barkis, a man they know nothing about other than he claims he's rich. And because they have squandered their wealth, they are willing to do anything, including sell off their own daughter, who earlier in the film they describe as ugly compared to the rest of the family, when she is, as I said when I was discussing Emily's character design, one of the most pretty character designs in the film. There are only 3 character designs in this entire film that are designed to look pleasing, and that is Emily, Victor, and Victoria. And those are our 3 main characters, where I would say Emily is the main character, as her name is on the film. So, yeah, I do love how they start to make you feel for Emily. They do it a little bit when they give you her backstory, but this moment solidifies it because you start to feel how lonely, even in the underworld, where everyone seems to love her, Emily truly is, because she doesn't have that deep connection, and she feels like she's lost a part of herself by dying so young.
You have only to suffer this union until death do us part. And that will come sooner than you think.
I love the fact that they don't want to hide who the villain is, because the story isn't about the villain, the story is about Emily, if that makes any sense. I know a lot of films nowadays hammer over the head who the villain is and make it seem, especially in kids' movies, like kids are dumb and we have to tell them who the villain is over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, so that they don't forget, because how could they possibly understand who the villain is if we don't tell them? This film doesn't do that. Yes, it tells you who the villain is straight away, like it makes it very obvious who the villain is, but it does that because he is not the point of the film. The point of the film is Emily and her story, and her coming to terms with the fact that her story ended the night she died. And I love the fact that they subvert the trope of, you think they're going to hide the fact that Lord Barkis is the villain and that he's trying to kill Victoria and that he is the one that killed Emily, but they don't do that. In the song where they talk about how Emily was killed by her lover who tricked her, the silhouette they show of the man that killed her looked exactly like Lord Barkis. The guy talks about how he had a wife once, but tragedy struck. And then you have the scene where he talks about how her dowry to Victoria is his right. And she's like, I'm broke. It's amazing. It's not really a twist, but it is if you weren't paying attention to the clues that were there. So you can still be surprised if you weren't paying attention, which as a kid, a lot of the time, you're not. So you're just enjoying the film. So you'll get the twist. But as an adult, it's obvious that it's Lord Barkers who killed Emily. Now, as I said, that's not the point of the film. The point of the film is Emily finding closure. That's what I think Corpse Bride is about. I think it's about Emily finding closure for the fact that she died so suddenly, and never got to have the happy ending she deserves. So that's why when her killer is brought to justice at the end, and she manages to give Victor and Victoria their happy ending, she's able to find peace because she didn't take away someone else's happiness, and she's able to move past the fact that she didn't get her own peace. And I love the fact that it symbolized in the same way that we see Victor freeing the butterfly at the beginning of the film. At the end of the film, Emily herself turns in to butterflies, signifying that she is now free from her past. It's such a beautiful ending. I absolutely love it. I love the way that this film does everything. I also love the fact that we get a Gone with the Wind reference when the dead come up for Emily and Victor's wedding.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I had to throw that in there, even though it's not really connected to this film, apart from a throwaway gag, because my mum is a massive Gone with the Wind fan, and she would kill me if I did not mention it. So, that one is for you, Mum. I threw that one in there for you. To sum up, my thoughts on The Corpse Bride go like this. I feel this movie is about closure. It's a very hauntingly beautiful and very spookily romantic film that is about a young woman whose life ended in a tragic way, coming to terms with the fact that her life has ended. And the characters you think when you first watch the film are the main protagonists of the film are nothing but a vehicle for her to overcome this trauma and grief and get some closure, not only by having the main perpetrator of this trauma for her brought to justice by those that have come to love her in purgatory, in the underworld that we see throughout the film, but for her to actually give someone else the happiness that she so craved. That's why the scene in the church when she is about to accept Victor as her replacement for the love she lost all those years ago, when she looks over at Victoria, she can't bring herself to do it. She can't take away someone else's happiness, knowing that feeling of having it but losing it for herself. And to me, it's such a gothic romantic story that emanates with me more now than it ever did as a child. I loved this film as a kid. I absolutely loved like the vibrancy. Emily creeped me out while simultaneously being one of my favorite characters throughout the film. I thought the maggot was hilarious as a kid. Now he's annoying, but also I love him as an animal sidekick for Emily. So like, I get why he's there. But the story for me has changed. To me, I thought it was about Victor, who just wanted to marry Victoria, being dragged away by this otherworldly being, and his story being hindered. And Emily was a hiccup he had to get over, and she just happened to find peace at the end. And now that I've matured through life a little bit, I feel like I've come to understand this film in a new light and see it for what I believe its true intentions were, and that being that the story isn't even about the characters we're introduced to at the beginning. It's about Emily, and their story was just the medium by which we were to connect with Emily, hence why the film is called The Corpse Bride, because it's all about her and her story, and how loneliness is something that can be even more brutal than death itself. And in finding that peace and helping someone else to not feel lonely, like Emily did for Victoria, Emily was finally able to let go of the things that were keeping her trapped in her own loneliness and move on to a better place, symbolizing her own growth and her own choice to become just like the butterfly at the beginning of the film, free. And with that, I'm going to bring this video to a close. So if you've liked this video, don't forget to smash that like button. If you want to see more content from us, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you can be notified when we drop more content. And as we always say around here, stay happy, stay healthy, and most of all, stay nerdy. See you in the next one.
And that's the story of our